Shri Krishna Parabrahmane Namaha. God is given good life to human beings. That life should be properly utilized by each and everyone. It is our responsibility. But lack of knowledge or intellectual, we are getting some type of disorders, that is called mental disorders. Whatever the thing what we are refusing, if we are forcibly made to see, that will become a kind of continuous fear, that is called phobia. Phobia is a kind of mental disorder. There are so many phobias. For example, a woman police officer may be so strict, even she can fight with a terrorist directly, such a guts. But she will be afraid of a small cockroach. That is her phobia. Phobia cannot be measured. It will be like this, that's all. So, whenever we get a kind of irrational feelings, it leads to a kind of phobia. There are so many causes for phobia. There are some risk factors also occurred for phobia. Whenever we get phobia, we can understand the symptoms and signs. If we want to find out others' phobia, how can we find? We can find out their symptoms and signs. By that also, we can come to conclusion that is, he is suffering from phobia. He is affected with phobia. Whatever the healthcare professionals diagnose phobia, sometimes it may be cured, sometimes it may not be cured, because it is to be cured by one's own efforts, one's own clearance of the feared things, frightened things. There are so many treatments for phobias. Didactic component and some other things can be treated for removal of phobia. Cognitive component, behavioral component, like this, we can try to remove the fear of phobia. We can't say is it possible to prevent phobias forever, because it's depend upon the person who suffers with phobia. It is different. Phobia is different from fear. Fear is different from phobia. Both are not equal. But the measurement level of fear is called phobia. A person can fear for everything, of cruelty, misery, that and that. Phobia will be attached to one or two things or few things. That is called phobia. It happened from childhood itself. We cannot get rid of this so easily. They are so afraid of even small creatures like spiders, cockroaches, etc. Why? Because that is called phobia. All phobias are not equal. Everyone may not suffer with the same phobia. Everybody has their own phobias, because it is very essential to know each and everyone. Therefore, we have to understand there are so many phobias. That and all we have to, if understand, we can at least avoid for forthcoming generation, the upcoming generations, not to suffer with phobia. So, we have to fight from the beginning. We have to uproot at the beginning level, starting level, not after developed level. Is it? That's why today I took the topic of what is phobia, because I used to see as a lecturer so many students have some phobia, especially girl students have examination phobia. Boys have lecturers phobia, subject phobia, somebody have physics phobia, chemistry, like that, which is very difficult. They feel that makes them into the stage of phobia. Nothing is that. So let us understand in detail what is phobia. Okay. Shri Venkatachaladhisham Shri Adhyasitavakshasam Shritachetana Mandaram Srinivasamaham Bhaje. A phobia is defined as a persistent fear of a situation, activity, or thing that causes the sufferer to want to avoid it. There are three types of phobias. Social phobia. Number one, it means the fear of public speaking, meeting new people, or other social situations. Agoraphobia. It is a fear of being outside and even inside also. Specific phobias. It is a fear of particular items or situations. Phobia are largely underreported, probably because many people with phobias find ways to avoid the situation that they fear. Therefore, statistics for how many people have phobias vary widely. Phobias are fairly common. Phobias are widely common. Women are thought to be twice as likely to develop a phobia than men. Some of the most common phobias include fears of public speaking or other social situation is called social phobia or social anxiety disorder. Even we can say open spaces, that is called agoraphobia. Closed in spaces, claustrophobia. Clowns, colorophobia. Flying on aeroplanes, aerophobia. People does not like to fly, get into the aeroplane because that aerophobia. Blood or birds, ornithophobia. All animals, zoophobia. Commitment, gamophobia. Driving, they are very curious to drive, but when they are sitting and driving, definitely they get phobia. That is xenophobia. Snow, chinophobia. Spiders, whenever they go to the bathroom, if they say find small spider, immediately they will cry like anything. That is because of spiders. That is arachnophobia. Needles, ichmophobia. Snakes, it is a common phenomenon to all. Ophidiophobia. Heights, acrophobia or altophobia. Some people never went across the bridges or tunnels. For example, when you cross Araku Valley, there are so many tunnels, and Rameshwaram bridges, some like germs like that. If they want to travel, they are afraid of it. Just we have to hug them to, they will hide their face and close their eyes tightly until crossing the bridge or tunnel. Why? That is called mysophobia. Phobias of holes are just a few unusual fears as phobias and may be considered weird or strange by some, but can be just as debilitating as those phobias that are more common. What are the facts for phobia? The three types of phobias are social phobia, mean fear of public speaking, meeting new people or other social situation. Agoraphobia means fear of being outside, and specific phobias mean fear of particular items or situations. The definition of phobia is the persistent fear of situation, activity, or thing that causes one to want to avoid it. Although phobias often go underreported, the statistics for people who have phobias are thought to be more than 6 million people in the United States, especially. The average age that phobias begin is about 10 years of age, because then only they start to understand the world. Women tend to be twice as likely to develop phobia compared to men. While there are almost as many phobias as there are situations, the most common kinds of phobias include social phobia, agoraphobia, colorophobia, aerophobia, etc. etc. Agoraphobia often occurs with panic disorders. If not treated, a phobia may worse to be the point where the person's life is seriously impacted by the phobia and by attempts to avoid or hide it, resulting in problems with physical health, friends and family, failure in school, and or lost jobs while struggling to cope. Phobias tend to run in families, can be influenced by culture and parenting style, and can be triggered by life events. People with phobia seem to be more likely to deal with the stress by avoiding the trigger for the stress and have trouble minimizing the severity of the fearful situation. Symptoms of phobia often involve public attacks. The evolution of phobias often includes questions by healthcare professionals that explore the symptoms that are occurring, a medical interview, and a physical examination. The treatment of phobias often includes the use of desensitization, cognitive behavioral therapy, and medications. The groups of medication doctors tend to choose from when treating a phobia treating include selective serotonin or uptake inhibitors, beta blockers, and occasionally benzodiazepines. Phobia sufferers sometimes cope with their fears by talking about it, refraining from avoiding situations they find stressful, visualization, and making positive self statement. What are the complications of phobias? If not treated, a phobia can worsen to the point in which the person's quality of life is seriously impaired, both by the phobia itself and or by attempts to avoid or hide it. For example, a fear of flying can result in the sufferer being unable to travel in aeroplane, etc. Some people have problems with their relationships, have failed in school, employment as a result of severe phobia. They never come to see them. While there may be for periods of spontaneous improvement, a phobia does not usually go away unless the individual gets treatments that are specifically designed to address this condition. Alcoholics can be up to 10 times more likely to develop a phobia than non-alcoholics, and phobic individuals may be twice as likely to suffer from alcoholism or another addiction than those who have never been phobic. It has even been found that phobic anxiety can be life threatening. For some people, increasing the risk of suffering from heart disease in both men and women. We have to find the causes and risk factors for phobia. While there is no single known cause for phobia, they are, though, to run in families, they be influenced by culture and how one is parented and can be triggered by different life events. Immediate family members of phobia sufferers are about 3 times more likely to also have a phobia than those who do not have such a family history. People whose parents either were overly protective or were distant in raising them may be at more risk of developing phobias. Phobia sufferers tend to be more likely to manage stress by avoiding the stressful situations and have trouble decreasing the intensity of the fearful situation. Another possible contributor to the development of phobias is classical conditioning. In classical conditioning, an individual responds to something that scares them by generalizing the fear of the specific thing or situation to more generalized things or situation. For example, a person may respond to real threat by one dog to developing a phobia of all dogs. Then, what are phobia symptoms and signs we can find? It's a question. Symptoms of phobias often involve having a panic attack. In that, they include feelings of intense fear, dread, and terror, despite understanding that those feelings are out of proportion to any real threat. In addition to physical symptoms are like tremors, sweating, mind going blank, nausea, rapid heartbeat, trouble breathing, and an overwhelming desire to withdraw from the situation that is causing the phobic reaction. Also, extreme measures are sometimes taken to prevent or leave the situations. Healthcare professionals can diagnose phobias. We can't say guarantee. Many healthcare providers may assess for the diagnosis of phobias, including licensed mental health therapists, family doctors, or other primary care medicals providers, specialists whom you see for a medical condition, psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers. If one of these practitioners suspects that you may have a phobia, you will likely be asked a number of questions to explore all the symptoms you may be having, and you may need to have a medical interview and physical examination. A phobia may co-occur with a number of other mental health problems, including schizophrenia, depression, obsessive compulsive order. This is called OCD. Recently you might have seen in Telugu cinema Mahanubhavudu. And substance abuse disorders. Phobias are particularly associated with other anxiety disorders. In addition to panic disorder, example of other anxiety disorders include a generalized anxiety disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. In children, school phobia or a fear of being alone may occur with or without separation anxiety disorder. As anxiety disorders in general may co-occur with a number of medical conditions or can be reaction to various medications, routine laboratory tests are often done during the initial evaluations to rule out other possible causes of these symptoms. Even there is a treatment for phobias. What will be that? Let us see. Helping phobia sufferers is thought to be most effective when psychotherapy and medications that are specific to the treatment of phobia are both used. One type of mental health therapy involves the supportive and gradual exposure of the person with phobias to situations that are increasingly similar to the one they are phobic about. Desensitization. These circumstances can either include actual or computer generated anxiety provoking stimuli. Cognitive behavioral therapy, this is called CBT, has been found to often quite effectively decrease phobic symptoms by helping the person with the illness change his or her way of thinking. Cognitive behavioral therapy uses three techniques to accomplish this goal. What are they? Let us see. A didactic component. This part of treatment involves educating the person about phobias and treatment and helps to establish positive expectation for therapy and promote the cooperation of the individual with a phobia. Number 2, cognitive component. It helps to recognize the ideas and assumptions that influence the behavior of the phobia sufferer, especially those that may predispose him or her to developing the disorder. Behavioral component, third one. This uses behavior modifying techniques to teach the person with a phobia more effective strategies for coping with problems. Then, what is a prognosis for phobia? Cognitive therapy and exposure therapy alone is a combination or with relaxation training have been found to be effective in treating phobias. Relaxation training alone has also been found to be effective in treating phobias patients, while some interventions like sedating people who are phobic about getting dental work may be useful in the short term, they may undermine truly overcoming the condition. We get some question. Is it possible to prevent phobia? What is the answer? So let us see. Phobia prevention that involves educating people with this illness, their loved ones, and other involved individuals like children's teachers have been found to be effective in preventing phobias from ever occurring. Ways that individuals with a phobia can work toward overcoming their fears include talking about their phobia, refraining from avoiding situations they find stressful, imagining themselves like, I'll be okay. In fact, when self-help methods are combined with belief, psychotherapy, phobia sufferers may achieve significant improvement in symptoms. We have doubts. What is fear and phobia? Let us see. Fear versus phobia. Phobias involve the experience of persistent fear that is excessive and unreasonable. It's not a common phenomenon, says Wilson, who is author of the book Don't Panic. Phobias are cured when a person approaches a particular situation or object or even anticipates the approach of it, and they understand the fear they will experience as a result of that situation will be unreasonable and excessive. The key to distinguishing a fear from a phobia is that while most people get the jitters if a spider crawls on their arm, people suffering from their arachnophobia, the fear of spiders, are physically or psychologically impaired by it. To be defined as a phobia, the fear must be cause some level of impairment, says Wilson. What he says, I had a woman come in who was afraid of spiders, and it got to a point where she would not go out at night because she couldn't see where they were. Then, how does someone get to the point where they are so afraid of spiders that can't go outside? The question. There are nature and nurture components to phobia, says Kathy Hogan Broom, PhD, National Mental Health Association spokesperson. While we don't know exactly why or where phobias originate, they are a type of mental illness with genetics playing a role as well as environment, meaning maybe someone had a negative or traumatic experience related to the core of their phobia. Even fear itself also. When Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Understand? He was describing phobia, the fear of being afraid. Though FDR had a different message in mind, he unknowingly hit on something else. Phobias run the gamut of life and include everything from spiders to outer space. The most common phobias involve natural disasters or elements like water and lightning, animals or insects like spiders or cockroaches, even lizards, and blood injuries or injunctions, such as people who faint at the sight of blood or a needle, says Hogan Broom. Fear of flying is another well recognized phobia, and since that 9/11 has only gotten worse. Fear of flying in recent times has become more common, says Hogan Broom. Since 9/11, September 11th happened, no? It has come up much more than it did in the past. Then there are social phobias, which include the fear of public speaking, the fear of test talking, or the fear of people in general. According to phobialist.com, which catalogs hundreds of tormenting phobias, people suffer from the fear of the number of octophobia and fear of 13, triskaidekaphobia, the fear of noise, or acousticophobia, the fear of ventriloquist dummies or wax statues, or automatonophobia, the fear of sitting down, or curtisophobia, and the fear of beautiful women, or venestrophobia. List is more. Fear no more, the slogan. People are generally not treated for phobia, says Wilson. A very small percentage, means 6% of people with a phobia go in treatment, in part because they are not totally disabled by it, so they find their way around. The treatment that was not most common in the past was called systematic desensitization. It was a pretty standard treatment. People were taught to relax and in that relaxed state, in a hierarchical way, they would have increased degrees of exposure to their fear. As the person become anxious, the stimulus would be removed and they would be allowed to relax. Then they would start over again, but up the ante and go one step forward or further. Now we are much more provocative in treating people with phobias. Using cognitive behavioral treatment instead of allowing a person to relax after being exposed to the stimulus, we teach them how to manage their feelings. The American Psychological Association defines cognitive behavioral modifications as a therapeutic approach that combines the cognitive emphasis on the role of thoughts and attitudes influencing motivations and response with behavioral emphasis on changing performance through modification of reinforcement contingencies. Thus, phobia can be prevented simply if you change the way you think, it will change the way you act. And if you change the way yourself, it will change the way as you think. Shri Kantaya Kalyananade Nadedram Shri Venkatnivasaya Srinivasaya Mangalam Mangalasasanapraye Madacharya Progamaihi Sarvesha Burvairacharya Shatrutaya Astu Mangalam.